All right. Welcome to the Manufacturing Come Up. Today we have a special interview today where we have two guests. And not only two guests, but the top two guests, right?
Oh, goodness. Whatever you want to call us.
Yeah, whatever you want to say, bud.
Yeah, but one thing that's a little bit different about this, we have two guests on the show, and we have a short amount of time to get these out. We'll also hit these guys up again for a longer one-on-one interview at some point in time, but we wanted to catch them here while they have their wonderful background, and we're all in one location, and we can do it in person. So, Chris, if you would, give us your background.
This episode of the Manufacturing Come Up is sponsored by Elite Automation.
Elite Automation is a systems integrator specializing in robotic weld cell applications, and especially the design and manufacturing of the weld fixture.
If you have any robotic weld cell needs, you can reach us at rfq@eliteautomationusa.com.
Yeah, well, first of all, I love the new show, Manufacturing Come Up. Great title. I love the vibe. So excited to share the Manufacturing Happy Hour story here today. And really, Manufacturing Happy Hour started out of necessity. I started my career as a sales guy at Rockwell Automation, and I worked in two markets. I started my career in Houston, Texas, where I was calling on, a more senior market, people between 40, 60 years old, been at their companies for a long time. Relationships, handshakes, those were really important. The face-to-face meeting was the way it was done. I moved out to the Bay Area, San Francisco, Silicon Valley, and everyone has their visions of what that's like. A bunch of young folks out there kind of running the show, and there's a lot of truth to that. So my customer base was a younger demographic at that point, 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds that were making decisions. And I needed a way to reach that audience. And I moved out there in my late 20s, so I thought to myself, well, how do I consume content? Videos, podcasts. So one afternoon, I set up a selfie stick with some books inside of my apartment, put my iPhone on it, and recorded a video of a new concept that I sent to some of my mentors at Rockwell. I'm like, hey, I've got this idea where I'll talk about a technology or a trend in our industry over a beer. And my mentors were like, Chris, this is a great idea. So Manufacturing Happy Hour started as basically a video newsletter that was short form. And over time, as it developed an audience, as I was sharing it on LinkedIn, I turned it into what some people have described as TEDx meets how it's made. Now it's a long form podcast where we really share the stories, trends, and technologies the same way you'd talk about them over a cold one through interviews with manufacturing leaders. So while things have evolved, the goal has always been very similar. It's like, hey, let's simplify this. Let's talk about this as if you're having a beverage someone so it's easy to understand. And that way we can attract more people to our industry, help people grow their companies, etc. So that's the long and short of Manufacturing Happy Hour.
Awesome.
I'm Jake Hall. I'm the Manufacturing Millennial. My story starts 16 years ago. So I'm a millennial. I'm 33 years old. And my first manufacturing job was working for a machine builder, sweeping the floors, cleaning the manual mills, the CNCs, doing a lot of the grunt work of the industry. It has some amazing experiences, doing a lot of the dark, dirty dangers of what manufacturing was and having the experience then to work in the welding group and then eventually the panel build stuff. Wrapped up high school, went to college. I got my product design and manufacturing engineering degree, biomedical engineering degree, and went to work for an automation distributor for 7 years. So I had some amazing experience working with robotics, motion, PLCs, vision, safety, sensors, and really getting the fundamentals of the technology that encompasses new automation in the factory floor. During that time, I went to a variety of conferences, and one of those was AHTD, the Association of High Technology Distribution. And sitting in this conference, there was me and probably 400 other people in the group, and I looked across the audience, and they were talking about the impact and the growth of the industry. And these are all the owners and the leaders of these companies. And as I look across here, I think I'm the only person here under 40. And I think this was the first time I really understood or really noticed the massive underrepresentation of younger workers in our industry. And from that, the name, the Manufacturing Millennial, came about because I'm a millennial, I'm in manufacturing, I'm an outspoken person and an advocate for the industry, and the name came. And really, honestly, so I came up with the name, and I didn't do anything for 6 months or so, and it didn't happen until the pandemic kicked off in the spring of 2020, where we had the mandatory work from home unless you're an essential worker. But at the time, I'm in sales and business development, so they say work at home. And I thought, I need to find a way to reach an audience on the non-traditional emails and text messages and phone calls. And I said, what's a way I can do it that doesn't feel obtrusive, that doesn't feel that I'm trying to sell a person something? And so I'm just going to start sharing on LinkedIn. And I'm going to start sharing content. I'm going to start sharing how we're solving problems. I'm going to start talking about industry topics. And then over that time, from 2020 to the remainder of that year, I just started to get more engagement and likes and comments on the post with no purpose to go out there and be like, I'm going to be this guy who's talking about stuff all the time. I just shared what I was passionate about. And then 2021 rolled around and the spring, summer of that time. And that's when the numbers were rolling in where I was getting 300, 400, 500 new followers a week. And all of a sudden I went from like 137 connections on LinkedIn to 10,000. And then it was 20,000. Then it was 30,000. And then, you know, in a month I'm going to be at like 50,000 followers. Like, so it was one of those things where I came across this growth because I said I need to be authentic and I need to be an advocate in our industry. And that's where I would say my growth with the Manufacturing Millennial has come out, where I'm not here to sell stuff. There's enough people out there selling stuff in the industry. What I'm here is to drive awareness to the cool technology that is here to enable manufacturers, and then also how that technology can be used to attract the millennials and now the Gen Zs of our industry to make them more excited about what our industry has to offer for, you know, their future career.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a highly needed thing. That's, you know, the whole purpose of the show is to grab you guys' background and really kind of put a highlight on that so that way people can see a path and career for themselves, which kind of brings me to the next thing. I'd like to dive a little bit deeper. Chris, what were you like when you were younger? Maybe let's go as far back as you're willing to take us.
Yeah, so a couple things that probably made me ripe for engineering or a technical degree, the direction I went. You know, from the time I was a kid, I was a Lego maniac. I think you're going to echo the same thing, Jake. So, but there was an inflection point for me. It's funny how I got into this, because like some people, it's like a graduate thing. Hey, I was good at math and science. I was good at those things. But for me, it was when I went to Six Flags St. Louis to ride a looping roller coaster for the first time, the Ninja.
Yeah.
It was awesome. I still think it's a very underrated ride. But anyway, I got off the ride and I thought it was the coolest thing. Rode it like 6 more times that day with my parents, mostly my dad. I think my mom went on it once and she's like, no more of that. But anyway, I was like, so who builds roller coasters? As you know, a young like 4th grader asks, and it's like, well, engineers do that. So it was at that moment, like there was never any question of it from that point. It's like, I'm going to be an engineer because those are the people that build roller coasters. And over time, I learned more and more what went into it. I don't think I fully understood what an engineer did by the time I got to college to study it. I think I certainly had some aha moments there. Sure. But for me, what I was like, I knew I wanted to go a technical path, but I always had a bit of a showman element to me. I played in some punk bands like growing up in high school and things like that. So when I was in my sales career, I got to the point where it's like, I think this is the right career for me. I'm good with people. I enjoy talking to people. I'm very extroverted. Not that you need that to be in sales, but I get energy from being around people. Sure. And my real thought was, it's like, hey, I bet there's a way that I can play to my strengths a little bit more based on my unique background and be on camera, because I think a lot of people talk about how their biggest fear is being on stage, public speaking, and these things. And I'm like, well, that's not, I get nervous before it sometimes, right? You still gotta, when you care about what you do, there are going to be some nerves and you want to do it well. But for the most part, I'm pretty comfortable in those scenarios. So I'm like, play to my strengths. I got the engineering background. And the last thing is, when I was in college, I was always the document guy. My job was to write the engineering reports that described what all the data meant and translate it. So it's like, okay, and I've already got this background of, hey, I'm the guy that knows how to simplify things. That's how it all came together from my early background into forming what I do today with Manufacturing Happy Hour.
Yeah, that's awesome that you was like, especially you was triggered by amusement park rides.
Yeah.
Which we might do one day.
We do. We need to make it down to your neck of the woods, Kentucky Kingdom, Holiday World. We got some options down in
Holiday
southern
World's
Indiana.
nice. I've been to a few of them, and I still think Holiday World's one of the best.
It's a very nice park. Very nice park.
This episode of the Manufacturing Come Up is sponsored by Elite Automation.
Elite Automation is focusing on AMR technologies. AMRs are autonomous mobile robots used in your facility to transfer goods or products from one side of your facility to the other.
This is a super powerful tool, and it's a new piece of technology that us as systems integrators can utilize as a tool to leverage your company to be more advanced than the next company and be able to automate systems that at one point were not able to be automated.
If you have any AMR needs, you can reach us at rfq@eliteautomationusa.com.
I mean, same thing for me. So like Lego was a massive inspiration to me. But like the one thing that I would say maybe was a little bit different from Chris, your journey is I never wanted to do the highly technical stuff. Like for me, I always knew that I wanted to be a relationship, customer focused, conversation focused role. Like for me, I'm super extroverted and I love just hearing people's stories and talking with them. So for the reason why I went to college is because I feel at the time there was a level of respect that came across the industry where you weren't going to be viewed as an industry expert or as someone who can explain stuff if you're just a sales guy who has no engineering background.
Or an engineer.
Yeah. And it's amazing how that's changed so much in the past 5 years, where now you're an engineer, but for a lot of people now it's, oh, you went to an associate's, or, we talked to you earlier today, you went and got a college degree, 2-year technical degree. That's just as valuable and if more respected out there, because we all know the cost of what an engineering degree can do. But yeah, I mean, so that was my role of, I've always known I've wanted to be on the relationship, the people side of the business. And I knew that technically I could always understand stuff. And that's why I have multiple engineering degrees, is because I get it. Yeah. But it's never been my passion. My passion now is going out there, and that's what I do through video and content now, is I can take highly technical stuff and break it down for the common person to understand how that impacts their daily life. Yeah. And where Chris does a phenomenal job with the large engaged conversations and the thought leader discussions, I focus on how do I create the most engagement and awareness for what we're doing in our current, I guess you could say, stage of social media on the internet, which is short form content. Yeah. And we're always battling for people's attention spans. And so I figured out, what can I do to create exciting, engageable content around manufacturing, automation, and skilled trades that people are going to understand that if they give 60 seconds or 90 seconds of their time, they're going to walk away
feeling like
learning something new.
Yeah.
And I think that's just the big thing. Is we were having a conversation earlier today where a lot of times people are afraid to open up a new book or open a magazine or an article or click on a link because the investment that they have to put into it. And if I can create content in a way that's going to educate, and if they want to learn more, they can pursue more information within that, but it's just to highlight enough where they can learn as minimal or as much as they want by the least amount of time investment, which we're all just busy right now.
They get a taste to learn more.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you're competing against TikTok, that's an easy flick of the finger.
Well, I was telling someone earlier today, it's like we got to get someone's attention in less than a second now. Like that first, you need to be conscious of what the first moment of a video clip you share is, because if that first moment's not good, I mean, it's half a second and it's on to the next thing.
I mean, that's why I've rolled out the branding that I do. I mean, you're going to see the Manufacturing Millennial logo, or Chris, what you do with the yellow upper and lower thirds when you're doing stuff like that. The brand is such a powerful thing in our industry. Personal brand is so powerful in our industry. And I think the companies out there that see that personal brand can benefit them and it's not a competition to them are the ones that are going to be the most successful. Yeah, and I think the manufacturing industry in a lot of cases has been the slowest to adopt that type of thing. When you look at other industries, makeup, for example, there's so many makeup companies who work with personal individuals because that personal individual creates more authenticity in conversation than a $100,000 produced commercial does.
Oh yeah, way more.
you know, and so that's the same focus that, you know, I go about with my content. How can I create something that's authentic? It's not salesy. They're going to learn something and they're going to be educated by it.
Absolutely. Was there any moment through your growing up, whether it was middle school, high school, whatever age, that you felt where you knew that you wanted to be on like the sales, the relationship building side of things? Because as you mentioned, you started off more of the hands-on type of worker.
Yeah. I don't want to say there was one point in time, like the first robotics team, right? First Robotics, I think we've all known someone who done something that was on it. I was the marketing group of First Robotics. So even when we were building robots, I was the person out there when I was in, you know, 14, 15-year-old that was going to companies and asking sponsorships and raising money. Like, that's just something where a lot of kids in high school age were afraid to go and speak in front of people. I loved it. I thrived on it. You know, same thing now where I'll go and speak in front of audiences. I love it. I get excited about it. I don't get nervous. I'm like, I'm going to go talk to 500 people and I'm going to share with them how cool our industry is. And I get an hour of their time to tell them what we're doing. Like, for me, that's just excitement. I think the other thing as well is when I was in college, I love doing business pitch competitions. So I did like entrepreneurship classes in college. I started a couple companies in college for business plans and stuff like that. I think it was like $40,000 that I won in pitch competitions.
Wow.
That's awesome.
You know, at the time, and that paid for going to college. But yeah, it was one of those things where I think I always just knew I wanted to be on the conversation side of everything.
I'm going to add a couple things here because one, I have a bit of a different story than you. I didn't know sales engineering or sales was like a respectable career for engineers, right? Like, I didn't even know it existed until I was interning as an engineer at Rockwell Automation, and we kind of did a round robin to learn about what other jobs were there. And I sat down with the person who became basically my sales training manager, and I learned about it for the first time. Like, what? There's a job where you're supposed to communicate and leverage your people skills and also be technical? I'm like, I didn't know this existed. I think one thing I want to add, though, Jake and I are both comfortable on camera. We're on stage. There are a couple things to it. One, we've been doing this a lot, right? It's not like it's nothing that just, well, maybe there's some element of it being natural. Like, it took practice to the point where we got comfortable. And for people that aren't comfortable using this as their medium, that's A-okay too. Everyone should be the best version of themselves they can be and leverage their unique strengths. You do videos, I do podcasts, we do a little, well, we kind of mix it up, right? But, you know, that's your specialty, that's my specialty. But writing, my goodness, that's still a great medium.
Writing is such a gift.
Lots of great ways.
I'm horrible at it, but people who can do it, an amazing gift.
Yeah, and even hey, if you just want to be an engineer and behind the desk and doing all that work as well, that's great too, right? Not everyone needs to be us getting up on stage. So I always want to hammer that point home. It's like, hey, especially when you talk about unique gifts that are kind of like camera ready gifts, it's like there are a lot of great things that everyone has their unique strengths, and it's important to double down on the things you love, the things you're passionate about, and not trying to look at someone and be like, oh, I want to be just like them. Even, you know, think about what feels authentic to you.
You know, and to add on to that as well, don't try. I think this is the biggest failure when it comes to like trying to pursue influencing or creating content or thought leader. Don't compare yourself to other people. Find out where you are and where you as an individual want to grow and where you as an individual want to be. Because if you're always, you can have ambitions and goals, but don't be like, oh my gosh, I made a post and only had 5,000 views. And for some people, 5,000 views is like, holy cow, that's amazing. I reached 5,000 people. But it's all perspective. And just because 150 people didn't like your post doesn't mean you're not bringing value to the industry. Everyone starts somewhere. Like, I was talking with you, I think, last night at the happy hour thing. I started off with like 130 people on LinkedIn, and I was ecstatic when I had 100 views.
Technically, you started with zero.
Yeah,
everyone. No, I'm saying that because everyone starts with zero, right? You start at 0 and 1, 2, and it builds from there.
But the transition of like when I said I'm going to be a lot more active on LinkedIn, I had like 130 connections at the time, and I was happy when I had a post at 100 views. Like, I was ecstatic, like holy cow, I'm going somewhere. But that growth happens over time.
Yeah.
It's not something that's going to happen immediately. Do what you're comfortable with and do what you enjoy,
Absolutely.
And that would be my biggest, advice and takeaway from what I've learned.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a long, slow grind. And for those people who are, like, interested and maybe, like, even if they're just posting some videos on LinkedIn about some of the things that are surrounded about their day-to-day and their work life or their company, maybe they're on the marketing team, video is one of those ones that are intimidating, right? And you'd see me, here on this camera and in college, like, you would never think I'd be on a camera. You'd never think that, I'd ever go on a stage. And if you go back, I had a fitness YouTube channel at one point in time.
Okay.
I didn't know that.
I had no idea.
This is
Yeah.
new to me. All right.
Yeah, so we grew it to a couple thousand. I actually dropped it for manufacturing. I said we're done with this. We're going to end it today. I'm going to go 101% into
There
what
you
I'm
go.
doing for my career, and started going down this road. Or I was already going down the road, but diving even deeper because I've always been somebody that's like over executing, right?
Yeah.
So, and I was putting in 60 hours of work a week. Well, now I'm going to put in 80, 120 hours a week to just become that expert of the industry. Like, there's some statistic goes so like if you spend 2 extra hours every day after work, you become an expert in your industry in 5 years.
Well, I think it comes down to, just an underlying theme of everything we've talked about. It's consistency, right? Malachi, you're doing it. Jake, you're doing it. I'm doing it. Like, you can't expect, expect big results right away, and you have to know there are going to be, like, days where you don't get big results along the
Yeah.
way, even when you do get bigger. There are going to be posts on social media that flop and just go unnoticed, right? It's just the nature
do
of
the
it.
consistency that you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
If you're comfortable with making 3 posts a week, great. Just do 3 posts a week. If you're comfortable doing 5 posts a week, do 5 posts a week. But find a plan and roll with that plan.
Even
Don't
one.
try.
Even
or
start with
one.
one. Like,
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
I think there's, we talk about this until we're blue in the face, but personal brands play so much into the success of companies, right? And if founders and executives aren't leveraging their strength to do that, it's a missed opportunity
Yes.
is what it ends up being.
Yeah, absolutely. And for the people that are in the marketing side of things and they're looking to start doing stuff like video, you might have to do 100 videos before they're not cringy. Like, my first YouTube videos were so cringy. I'm
my
like,
Oh,
gosh,
yeah.
I'm sure a lot of them just got deleted because I was like, yeah, this can't go on the internet.
Yeah, I got some really rough ones
Yeah,
right at the
I
start
did
as
too.
well.
You
Yeah.
can find ones from me that I was shooting on a cell phone that I made a stand out of duct tape and a 2x4, and that was my first video.
Yeah. It's amazing where people start out. Mine
Yeah.
was basically the same thing. I was using like a step ladder or something like
Yeah.
that.
You know it.
Absolutely. So you guys have any last valuable points that you'd like to add to the audience before we go today?
Oh, wow. Jake, do you want to lead this one off? I'm trying to think of what I would summarize with right now.
I really think it goes, my biggest value for, I would say from what I'm knowledgeable within the industry, and that's, a person who's out there creating content and advocating what we're doing. Create a plan that you're comfortable with and roll with that plan. And don't try and do a million things all at once. Find what you're comfortable with and become good at that. And then once you become really good at that, take the next thing. And then once you're good with that, take the next thing. Don't try and do a million things all at once because then you're not going to do anything great.
well.
Yeah.
Now that I've had some time to think about it, I think I know what I would say. And it's really basic stuff. It's be consistent and be disciplined, right? I think now that I'm a little older and have the perspective of, okay, I've done manufacturing happy hour for, 3 to 6 years, depending on what iteration of the project you look at. It's like, oh yeah, it wasn't anything big at the beginning, but now I see because I was consistent and put it in the time, I saw how it built up. So now that I see that, I'm like, oh yeah, it's all about doing the little things every day, exercising, running, same way. I'm a runner as well. And once you get comfortable with that and you realize the process is as much fun as the result, and that, nothing ever comes. The best things in life usually don't come in 6 to 12 months, right? It takes time to make it happen.
Yeah.
So just stick with it. Stay consistent is my advice to anyone that's pursuing
Absolutely.
content, their career, etc.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Jake. Thank you, Chris, for being on the show on the Manufacturing Come Up. We'll catch them again. Drop it. Make sure y'all bug them. Let them know you want the one-on-one. You want to dive deeper into their story, get the real backstory. I think the value is all in the details. I love getting super deep and really understanding people's backstory. I think it's going to make a significant impact to people.
Happy to come back.
Yeah.
You're doing a great job. We're excited to watch how Manufacturing Come Up keeps growing as well. Because if there's
absolutely.
anything Jake and I have learned about you, it's that you are consistent and you're putting in the work.
Absolutely.
So only good things to come for you.
Thank you, guys.
Cool.
Till next
Cheers.
time.